Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Target Jobs webinar on the Solicitor versus Barrister, choosing the career for you. Amy, I've just seen that the poll question has popped up. Perfect. Thank you so much. Just wanted to make sure that that stays hidden for a little bit. Yes, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. We will all introduce ourselves very briefly, but just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Hannah Coe, and I'll be taking you through the sort of first part of the session, but my colleagues will introduce themselves very shortly. We've got a great hour coming up for you with lots of great fun content, including some interaction. So we're really looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts and feedback on this. So let's get ourselves started. So firstly, just to introduce ourselves here at the University of Law, we're delighted to be with you today. Hopefully many of you will have heard of us here at the University of Law. We are a 5-star university, so we have an overall 5-star rating from the QS World University Rankings, and there's only about 10 or 15 universities in the UK that have that rating, so we are really proud to have achieved that. We have trained more practicing lawyers in the UK than anyone else, so we're really proud to say that there are more lawyers working in England and Wales who've come through our doors than any other UK institution. And we have over 97,000 students in our alumni network. In fact, I believe we may have just reached very recently 100,000 alumni in our network. So we do have a really vast range of students available for you to speak to. And you will be taught by experts with us at the University of Law. So all of our postgraduate tutors are qualified lawyers, professionals, or practice-focused academics. So you are really going to be hearing from those who really understand what you're going through and kind of, have been there, done that, and worn the t-shirt if you want to stay safe from that perspective. So we really do provide you with a lot of helpful hints and tips as you go through our courses. So here is what we are going to go through in the next hour. We are going to start the session off in a very short while by doing a quick quiz to get you guys thinking about what you already know about the differences between solicitors and barristers. Then we're going to take you through the kind of fundamentals and basics of the two different professions. We'll have a video about halfway through, which will be a chat between a future solicitor and a future barrister. And then we're going to end on presenting to you with a few case studies and getting you to understand how a solicitor and how a barrister would go through those case studies. But it feels like a good time for the three of us to introduce ourselves. So I'll go first and then I will hand over to my colleagues. So as mentioned at the start, my name is Hannah Coe. I'm the Senior Student Recruitment Manager at the University of Law, and I look after all of our postgraduate professional law courses. So that includes the courses that help you to train to become a solicitor or a barrister. So I'm going to hand over to Miriam to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, thanks Hannah. My name's Miriam. I'm a future solicitor at DAC Beechcroft. So I've done the LLB at the University of Law and the LPC MSc in Law and Business Management at the University of Law as well. And I currently work as a student recruitment officer here to help students find their way into our courses.
Lovely, thanks Miriam. And Lucy?
Hi everyone, my name is Lucy. I'm a future barrister at Exchange Chambers, and I have a criminal pupillage. I'll be a criminal barrister and I start in October this year. So I did the LLB at Edge Hill University, then moved on to the BPC with the combined masters at the University of Law Liverpool, and at the moment I am the coordinator of the University of Law's Future Pupil Programme. So I help other people get to the bar, get pupillage, scholarships and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, that's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much both. So we are hoping that this session won't sort of take the full hour, so there will hopefully be some opportunities at the end for questions as well, because I'm sure having a future pupil barrister and a future solicitor on the call is a great opportunity for you to ask all of your questions. So we will hopefully have an opportunity for you to do that at the end. But now we are going to, as I mentioned earlier, move on to a short quiz. So what you're going to see on the screen as we go through is some questions pop up in front of you. And the first one has just been submitted now. So who is more likely to be self-employed? Would you say that this is a solicitor? Would you say that it's a barrister? Would you say both of them? Or would you say neither? So solicitor, barrister, both, or neither. I'll give you a few seconds to pop your votes in. I can see them all coming in already now, which is brilliant. So solicitor or barrister, both or neither. I'm just having a look at how many people we've got on the call versus how many have voted and taking ourselves out of that mix because we, of course, know most of the answers. So fabulous. So I'll give it just a couple of seconds more. Don't worry if you're not sure, pop an answer in that you think is right. Follow the crowd if you think that that's the best way for you to do it. But do pop any answers in that you feel you would like to do. So from what I can see, the vast majority of people have said that a barrister is more likely to be self-employed, and I can confirm that is the correct answer. So well done. Barristers are definitely more likely to be self-employed. Not always definite. You can be part of the employed bar, but more often than not, barristers are generally self-employed, whereas solicitors generally work for a company or a firm, so are often not self-employed. But well done to everyone on that one. Moving on now to question 2, and hopefully the poll should skip over to the next question. Just give it a second. I haven't seen it move on to the second question. I don't know, Miriam or Lucy, is it still showing the first question for yourselves?
No, I can see the second one.
I can see the second question, yeah.
Can you really? Okay, maybe if I put a vote in, can I move on to the second question? Brilliant. Okay, I have to vote. Perfect. I will continue to do that. Lovely. Apologies for that, everyone. So question number 2, who has the longest length of required supervised work experience before qualifying? Is that a solicitor? Is that a barrister? Is it both or is it neither? So who has the longest length of required supervised work experience before they qualify? So this is kind of thinking of the time period after you've done all of your studies, then you have to do a certain period of work experience before you get qualified. So I'll give it a minute or so more just to get any final votes in. I can see the votes coming in, which is really good. All right, any final votes before we move on? Okay, so 54% of those on the call have voted for barrister. And I can actually tell you on this occasion, unfortunately, you're not correct. Those of you who voted for solicitor, you are correct. So well done. A solicitor generally has a 2-year period of supervised work experience before they qualify, whereas generally a barrister generally has either 1 year, so 12 months, or that can be extended sometimes out to 18 months, but generally it will just be a 12-month period. So solicitors have the longest length of required supervised work experience. Okay, let's move on to question 3 then. Who is most likely to spend the most amount of their working day in courts? Would you say this is a solicitor, a barrister, both or neither? Who is most likely to spend the most amount of their working day in a court? We've got some votes coming in, which is great to see. Okay. So 88% of you have gone for barrister, and I can confirm that that is the correct answer. Barristers are more likely to spend most of their working days in court. Not all, and I'm sure when Lucy takes you through the working life of a barrister later on, you'll see that not all of their time is spent in court, but certainly a large percentage of their time would be spent in the court. So well done to those of you who said barrister. Moving on to question 4 now. Which profession would require you to pass exams covering criminal, tort, contract, and public law? Would that be a solicitor, a barrister, both, or neither? So which profession would require you to pass exams covering criminal, tort, contract, and public law? Okay, a few more seconds for some final votes to come in. Okay, so I can see 72% of you have gone for both, and that indeed is the correct answer. For both of the professions, you should have a qualifying law degree or a qualifying conversion course to move into the profession. So those of you who voted for both, you are indeed correct. So well done to all of you there. Fabulous. Moving on to question 5 then. This is a really interesting one, and often people get these answers all a bit mixed up. So what is the average cost of a standard barrister's wig from Ede and Ravenscroft? So this is a supplier of the barrister's wigs, and you can see here we're starting at $399, so you get the idea of how much these wigs will cost brand new. So you've got $399, $499, $599 or $699. What is the average cost of a barrister's wig? And this is brand new. I'm sure Lucy can attest to the fact that a number of barristers don't buy them brand new because of their cost. So a few more seconds for everyone to pop their votes in. Okay, we have ended, unless things move around while I'm talking, we've ended on a tie. 33% of you have gone for $499. Oh, it's just changed. It's just changed. I knew that was going to happen. So we've got a slight lead on £499. I can confirm for you that those who went for $599 are correct. The standard cost of a barrister's wig is £599 brand new. So that is why lots of barristers end up not purchasing brand new ones, certainly when they first start out, because they, as we said earlier, where they're self-employed, it can sometimes be an expensive outlay very early on in your career. Okay, question 6. Which of the following is not a Magic Circle law firm? So we're back to the solicitors front now. Which of the following is not a Magic Circle law firm? Allen and Overy, who have recently rebranded to A&O Shearman, Clifford Chance, Phil Fisher, Linklater, Slaughter and May, or Kirkland and Ellis. Which of these is not a Magic Circle law firm? Got some good answers coming in at the moment. So far, no one has voted for A&O Shearman and for Slaughter and May, but we've got votes for all of the others at the moment. Oh, ignore me. A&O Shearman is now the only one. Maybe you've all been reading the legal press, so you know a little bit about that company, perhaps. Okay, so 40%. Oh, I'm going to stop talking. It keeps changing. Who's voting so last minute? Love this. Okay. So I can confirm that the correct answer is Kirkland and Ellis. So well done to the 19% of you who went for that one. All the others are Magic Circle law firms. So well done to all of you who went for Kirkland and Ellis there. So moving on to question 7. Which of these locations has the largest number of lawyers practicing in that area? London, South East England, North West England, or Wales? London, South East England, North West England, or Wales? Pop your votes in. Brilliant, lots of votes coming through. Love to see this, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, 2 more seconds. Okay, 96% of you have gone for London, and you are correct. London has the largest percentage of lawyers practicing in that area. So well done to those of you who said London. Moving on now to the next question, 8. Who is most likely to, oh my goodness, let's put my teeth back in. Who is most likely to specialise in non-contentious practice areas? And I will get one of my esteemed colleagues to tell you a little bit about what non-contentious means in a second. But who is most likely to specialise in non-contentious practice areas? Solicitor, barrister, both or neither? Can see some votes coming in now, which is great. I'm so sorry, my English is really struggling today. You're putting votes in, not votes, that's for sure. Fabulous. give you a few more seconds to get your votes in. Okay, so we've had votes for all 4 categories, which is really interesting. But 59% of you have gone for a solicitor, and I can confirm that you are correct. Solicitors are most likely to specialise in non-contentious practice areas. Miriam, you are the future solicitor. Could you give us a very quick overview? What does non-contentious and contentious actually mean?
Sure. Non-contentious law means work that doesn't involve a dispute or an argument over something. So because solicitors are usually working where, for example, we're trying to merge 2 companies, or a company's trying to buy another, there's no argument in place. That would be non-contentious work. The reason solicitors are usually practicing this sort of area is because barristers are usually in court trying to settle a dispute. And if you need to settle a dispute, you need to be in court, which is when you need to enlist a barrister. So contentious work is when there is a situation that has arisen where there is a dispute to resolve.
Thank you very much. Much better put than I would have ever been able to do. So thank you, Miriam. Okay, moving on now to question 9. 2 more questions until we finish the quiz. Who is more likely to work on much broader work with a variety of colleagues from other professions? Would you say that that is a solicitor, a barrister, both, or neither? Who is more likely to work on much broader work with a variety of colleagues from other professions? Few more seconds to get your votes in. Okay, 58% of you have gone for solicitor, and I can confirm again that is the correct answer. Barristers generally liaise mostly with just barristers, whereas solicitors can pull in lots of other people from lots of different professions into their work. So well done for those of you who have said solicitor. And finally, for question 10, when it comes up, here we go. Which profession requires you to have a legal master's or an LLM course? Which profession requires you, and that's the key word here, to have an LLM? Votes coming in now, which is great. Make them count, guys. It's our last question of the quiz. I'll give it a few more seconds for any final votes. Don't worry if you're not sure. Put in what you think is the right answer. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, 54% of you have said neither, and I can confirm that is the correct answer. So well done to those of you who have said neither. You do not require an LLM for any of the professions of solicitor or barrister at all. It can certainly help in certain situations, but there is no requirement in either profession to have one. So thank you very much to everyone who took part in that quiz. Just a little fun interactive session to get you all thinking and started. But we're going to move on now to kind of looking at the differences between solicitors and barristers. And I think it's absolutely right that my wonderful colleagues explain their future professions above myself. So I'm going to hand over now to Miriam to talk a little bit about what a solicitor does.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so a solicitor, as you can see on the screen there, a kind of wide definition is a legal professional who provides specialist legal advice in different areas of law. So solicitors can usually choose which area of law they want to qualify into, but we do something called a training contract where you typically end up in various different industries to try and see what you're interested in. And you'd be responsible for representing and defending a client's legal interest. So we'd be working very closely with the clients pretty much from beginning to end. So we do take instructions from the client from first point of contact and kind of become stand at their side throughout the entire process. Even if at one point they do need to go to court, we'll still be there to kind of guide them through the entire process. And we'll be giving the legal advice to the client and helping them work through their legal problems. A lot of the work that you would be doing would be researching and writing legal documents. So there is kind of this myth, I would say, that people expect lawyers to kind of, or solicitors and barristers, to know all the law off the top of their head. That's definitely not the case. You would usually just have a first meeting with the client and then go off and do your research. And the variety of places to work, it doesn't mean that we're all international and things like that. It just means that you could be found to work either in your office or the client's office, or the client wants to meet somewhere. Or, for example, if you are working in real estate and a client wants to acquire some land, you might go and do a little trip to the land and have a look. Or you could be working kind of within a company, so not in private practice, but kind of more in-house. So you'd be working within the offices of the client itself, if you're working specifically for that client only. So hopefully that kind of makes sense as a small summary of what a solicitor does. I'll pass over to Lucy now to tell you how a barrister's lifestyle kind of differs.
Thank you, Miriam. As you can see on the slide, barristers have various roles, very different to a solicitor, although it sometimes can overlap, not to confuse things. I'm going to start by saying I will give you a summary, but it does depend on the area of law, and you're going to have to stop me from repeating that multiple times. So just to give you an idea, as we've sort of mentioned, a criminal barrister, you'll be in court every single day, if not most days, whereas if you practice in something, an area of law that perhaps each party wants to get resolved before a trial, or it can be resolved before a trial, so say commercial, construction, personal injury, your work might be more paper-based and you might be in court once a month or a few times a year. So it just depends which way you go, but there is room to sort of specialise in a couple of areas or change your path sort of halfway down the line. It is really flexible in that sense, but just generally, in the UK, the role of a barrister is to be specialist in court advocacy. So advocacy is really the crux of being a barrister, public speaking, and presenting legal arguments in court. You're also an independent source of legal advice to your client. That's sort of the other side of it as well. So barristers usually practice as advocates representing their clients in court. On the other hand, solicitors tend to do the majority of their legal work in the law firm or in the office, or like Miriam said, they can come to court to be that support for the client, but the barrister will be the voice for that client in front of a judge, a jury, magistrates, and that kind of thing. So day-to-day responsibilities, these do vary. They change depending on the area of law, and they do change case to case as well. But just generally, daily tasks include giving legal advice to both solicitors and lay clients, translating that client's issues into legal terms and then representing them, researching cases, writing legal documents, generally preparing the case, liaising with other legal professionals, other barristers, other solicitors, of course appearing in court, and with that comes witness handling, so cross-examination, examination in chief, where you're asking questions of a witness. Reviewing evidence will be a large part of your job, and also in civil or civil, negotiating settlements, and pleas in mitigation in crime, which is where you try and get a lesser sentence for the defendant.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lucy, and also to Miriam for that. So we've talked about what the core roles are. Maybe it's a chance to look at kind of what the differences are between the two roles themselves. So as we said, solicitors are, legal professionals qualified to deal with conveyancing, maybe drawing up wills, mergers between two different companies. They can advise clients. They can also represent them in the lower levels of court if they have certain rights, and they can instruct barristers to represent in the higher levels. The solicitor's role is to take the instructions from the client. So they are very much involved in clients from the very, very beginning. Barristers are a bit more independent. They are less close to their clients. They don't quite spend as much time. In theory, there's no reason why a barrister couldn't meet their client the day before they represent them in court. That's quite possible to happen, especially with last-minute cases. So there is that opportunity for, barristers to be slightly less close to their clients. That could certainly happen. We said at the beginning, your barristers are self-employed, so they don't necessarily have that steady income coming in as could be expected. Whereas your solicitors are paid more of a salary, so they have that kind of regular, more monthly income coming in like a traditional role. Barristers, you would need to be a lot better with your money, unless you are, of course, at the employed bar, because you may find that there is not necessarily that steady income coming in. Solicitors generally are a bit based in an office. They will generally stay in one place, whereas you can find that as a barrister, you can move around the country for work. You may find that a case calls you to the north of the country when you're kind of based in the south of the country, and sort of vice versa. You have that opportunity to move around the country a lot more for work. Solicitors also have a bit more of a defined career path as well, whereas the barristers, and I feel like saying can often take more risks, might be a little bit misleading. It's not that all barristers are big risk takers or anything like that, but you don't necessarily have that defined career progression perhaps that those solicitors would do. So you may find that differs slightly. And then the key another key difference is also the numbers as well. You can see at the bottom there from a survey that was done in 2021, so there may well be some more up-to-date options here as well. In 2021, there were just over 209,000 solicitors on the roll, whereas for barristers in England and Wales, there was just over 17,000. So there's a real stark difference in the number of solicitors versus the number of barristers. And that's a really important point to make for you all today as well. You can see there that it states how many solicitors are on the roll in England and Wales and how many practicing barristers there are in England and Wales. What we're talking about today is all relating just to England and Wales. So if you are potentially interested in qualifying in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, or in another country, there will be slightly different routes and there will be slightly different things that you will need to consider and think about. But everything we're talking about today is for those who are interested in going into the legal profession within England and Wales specifically. So do kind of bear that in mind. So I have seen a question in the chat box from, I think it's Uma, with regards to what do you do after university to become a barrister or solicitor. So I am going to answer that question now for you. So you'll have this initial period. So lots of you will probably want to go to university and do a law degree. Some of you may already be on that stage as you're going through your legal journey. Some of you might not be thinking about going to law going to university to do law. Some of you might be considering going and doing another subject, something that you're really passionate about, something that you really enjoy studying at university or in your college degrees at the moment. There are options for you to convert into law after a non-law degree. So you can either go do a law degree at university, or you can go on and do a non-law degree and then go on and do a law conversion course. Either way, you'll come out at the same point. For anyone who began their legal studies prior to September 2021, so started an undergraduate law degree prior to September 2021, or started a conversion course prior to that point, you are still eligible to use the old route to qualification as a solicitor, which is a legal practice course. We are going to focus more heavily on the new route to qualification, which is the SQE. So if you would like to be a solicitor, once you have finished your law degree, or once you finish your non-law degree and your law conversion course, you will go on to take the solicitor qualifying examinations, or they are also known as the SQE. SQE is broken down into two stages. So you've got SQE1 and SQE2, and there are courses that are provided to you to help you to sit those examinations. So they are a set of assessments, and then you would do a course you would do a course prior to them in order to prepare you to sit and hopefully pass those assessments. Once you pass the SQE, stage 1 and stage 2, you would move on to your 2 years of qualifying work experience. You may have heard of the terminology of a training contract. This training contract can count as your 2 years of qualifying work experience, but there are also a number of other opportunities that exist for you to gain your qualifying work experience as well. If you're more interested in the route to practice as a barrister, then instead of doing the SQE assessments, you will move on to a bar course. Here at the University of Law, our course is known as the Bar Practice course, and this is generally a course that lasts for around about 1 year if you do it full time, and it will teach you all of the fundamentals that you will need to become a barrister, and you will sit and hopefully pass the assessments contained within that course. You'll then go on to do 1 year's worth of pupillage. So Lucy will be starting her pupillage this coming autumn. Miriam will be starting her 2 years on her training contract this coming autumn as well. So the pupillage is 1 year long, and it's that on-the-job training, similar to the training contract or the qualifying work experience. That final stage is learning on the job. It's putting all of the skills and knowledge that you learn on your undergraduate law degree, your conversion course, your SQE course, your bar practice course, putting it all into practice and actually completing the kind of on-the-job parts of it, so you get that physical understanding of how it works really in person. I will come back to a lot of the questions. I'll try and type some responses when I hand over to Lucy and Miriam. Obviously, Lucy and Miriam, if you want to look at any of the questions in the question area and answer while I'm chatting away, please feel free to do so. But we will get to as many questions as we can, and we'll hopefully have some time at the end to field some questions as well. So, before we carry on into the session, I'd like to take a short break to show you a quick video, which is a chat between a future solicitor who you may well recognise as being on the session today, and a future barrister who previously worked with us. So hopefully this video will work for you all.
I think being a solicitor involves a lot more client-based early preparation work than being a barrister. As a barrister, you tend to pick the case up very last minute, on the day of trial perhaps, or sort of towards the end of proceedings as such. I always say to bar students, because the common answer is, I don't want to be a solicitor because all they do is paperwork. Yeah. And I'm like, but I swear that's not true. No. I mean, you do paperwork, you build the case, yeah, but there's paperwork as a barrister too. So we will write opinions for solicitors to, you still have to do the legal research, you still have to do elements of written work and paperwork as a barrister as well. It's just that you don't build the case from scratch. That's the solicitor's job, and that's where it differs. But I think it's important to note that a solicitor can also get advocacy rights and things like that.
I think the biggest misconception is that even though the solicitor and barrister role is so different, that the paths never cross, but actually there's so much work that we have to do together in one client's case, that I think people forget that it's very important to build relationships with barristers as a solicitor and vice versa.
Yeah, definitely. Without the solicitors, barristers don't have any income coming in. The bulk of the work comes from solicitors giving us the work and building relationships with instructing solicitors. To be a barrister, you must have completed an LLB or a qualifying law degree, so that can comprise of an MA Law conversion course or a PGDL course. And then after that, you must complete the bar practice course, as it's now known, or bar training course. It has various different names depending on providers. Either way, you have to have done the 7 core areas of law in the United Kingdom and Wales, and then go on to complete the bar practice course. When you finish the course and you've been called, you're an unregistered barrister. Right. And then once you've completed pupillage, you are a registered barrister. Okay. And it's really important not to hold yourself out at the bar to any more than being unregistered if you've not done pupillage yet, because you've not got that licence and that practice certificate. So when people always say, what's pupillage? In essence, it converts you in from an unregistered barrister to a registered practitioner.
You would have to do a law degree, a qualifying one, or if you want to do a non-law degree, you can do a conversion course after that. Following that, you'd have to complete either the LPC if you're still eligible for it, and if not, you would do the SQE, and you would do your training contract, and then you are a qualified solicitor. For those that have completed the LPC, they would need a training contract. You would apply through a firm's website. It's essentially their graduate recruitment website. Alternatively though, for those kind of completing the SQE, they would need 2 years of qualifying work experience. can work in a law firm, so that's essentially a group of solicitors kind of working in an office as you would see kind of in TV shows or stereotypically any kind of job. You could also, as a solicitor, work in an in-house legal department, so for a company that has their own legal counsel, you could be part of that.
You pay rent to Chambers as a barrister, so once you're through your first 6 months on pupillage, you will start earning your own income, not an award paid for you by your pupillage award. You will be given guaranteed earnings, but you will earn above that, hopefully, and out of that comes your payments to Chambers to have basically your name and a seat in Chambers. So yeah, we practice out of a Chambers rather than a firm. The firm will pay you a salary, if I'm right. Well, as a barrister, we don't get a salary. We are self-employed. Well, majority of the profession. Salary is a unique thing at the bar.
I think that's one of the most common questions I've ever gotten is the salary and who gets paid more and how do you get paid. And being in the law industry, you have to start working in an area that you like. And then
broadening it much later. You can build your practice much later, which will help the income come in.
Once you kind of get into your law industry, I say that it's always possible to build up your salary. Being in law, it's obviously a very high status job, a lawyer. You can't beat around the bush about it. So you will get that salary that you're looking for. It just might take some time.
Fantastic. So hopefully that has given everybody a little bit of an a little bit of an insight into some of the other differences that exist within the professions as well. So just going to wait for this to switch back over to our slides. Perfect. Thank you so much. And I can see that Miriam and Lucy have been very kindly answering some of your questions in the chat area. So we will continue to do that, but hopefully we'll have some time to take some live at the end as well. So just very quickly, if you are interested in becoming a solicitor or a barrister, then it is really important to kind of understand what's going on in the legal market at the moment, because you want to be able to have really relevant conversations with professionals in the business and be able to kind of talk about some of these really important points. So on the side now are just some trends that are currently happening within the legal market within England and Wales. I'm not going to go through every single one of them for the interest of time, but just to kind of pop through a few of them. Training contracts were up by 0.4% in 2021. We don't have the official figures for since then, but we have expected that training contracts opportunities have continued to rise because there was a dip of just under 4% in 2020 due to the impact of COVID-19. So it does really show that there is a return to the sector, which is really, really great. There is a real focus from firms on diversity and inclusion. This is a really big focus for firms, certainly, and also barristers' chambers. Research has found that female, LGBTQ+, disabled and trainees of a BAME background, associates and partners have all increased over the last 5 years. So there is a real focus on this kind of diversity and inclusion piece. 17.1 solicitors on the roll state that they come from a BAME background as well, which is higher than the actual national average of those who state they come from a BAME background, which is around 13%. So there is a real focus on diversity and inclusion within the realms. Legal technology and the use of it is increasing in every single area. Private clients will use high street practices to use client management software. There's a real race amongst different city firms to introduce AI. So the legal technology and the use of it is increasing in every sector. So tomorrow's lawyers, you have to be very, very much tech savvy. There are lots of changes in climate and sustainability as well. The number of climate change related lawsuits has doubled since 2015. So climate change is becoming a really interesting area as well in the sector. So just a few things that you would definitely be worthwhile kind of looking at and knowing a little bit more about before you're looking at going to interviews for either of the roles, I would say. So finally, just having a look at some of the roles and tasks, and we have touched upon a fair few of these as we've gone through the session today. So before I hand over to Miriam and Lucy to look at some application tips and then some case studies to finish our session off, it's just worth reiterating some of the roles and tasks that do exist in both of the professions. This is what you could spend your time, or the majority of your time, doing if you become a solicitor or a barrister. You could spend your time negotiating and questioning with your client, perhaps even with a judge in a legal setting as well. You might spend your time drafting different documents, especially if you're working in a type of area that involves maybe drafting contracts. You'll spend a lot of your time doing legal research, especially those who are entering the solicitor profession. You'll spend a lot of your time advising clients on the law, especially again if you are in the solicitor profession. Representation and advocacy very much forms a major part of what a barrister will do. You'll spend your time conferencing and meeting with clients and doing a lot of problem solving as well. They're both really, really exciting areas and really, really exciting careers to go into. And I know certainly that Miriam and Lucy are really looking forward to starting their careers off later this year. So I'm going to hand over now to Miriam, who's going to take you through a few application tips if you are looking at making applications to become a solicitor.
Thank you, Hannah. Really helpful information on the legal market. And it's really important that we keep our commercial knowledge very current and very fresh in terms of all the topics that Hannah's kind of touched on. And that's really what makes and breaks an application. So that would be my biggest tip is make sure your commercial awareness is being updated all the time. I always say no more than 2 years old because it's really irrelevant at that point. You need to make sure you're understanding what the law firms are going through now and for the kind of next 5 years. These tips are really based off my own experience with doing the applications, which I'm not going to sugarcoat, weren't easy. But once you kind of start to figure out what they're looking for in your applications, you start to understand it a little bit better. It becomes a little easier. So the biggest tip, of course, is to research the firm and the sector that interests you. That doesn't mean to say that you need to know which industry or law firm you want to kind of qualify into straight away. It's more to say that you want to have kind of a general understanding of what the firm does and what the sector could look like for you when you start to work there, and then for the future as well. In terms of the level of research you need to do, we always recommend people to do the amount of research where if we were to cross out the name of the law firm in your application, we could still be able to tell which law firm you are applying to, just because of the level of knowledge and background research you would have on the firm itself. Less is more when it comes to applications. The first round of training contract applications I was probably doing 20 applications within the month, because it's really, really easy to fall into a path of doing so many applications because loads of law firms use the same application portal. Your answers are copied over. So really you're just editing a couple of things and then just pressing apply. And then you act shocked when 20 rejections come through. So less is definitely more. I'm now recommending for you to do 5 applications at most, and that's even quite a lot as well. Because of the amount of research you need to do for the one firm, you need to multiply that by 5. You do need to dedicate some significant amount of time to it. So once you do less applications, you dedicate more time, the applications just naturally become better than if you're doing 20 really vague ones and you're copy and pasting answers over, which you should never, ever do. Start building your network from now. So going to open days at law firms, going on LinkedIn. Something that I did is once I found the law firm that I definitely decided I wanted to apply to, I typed in trainee solicitor at the law firm, which is DAC Beechcroft, on LinkedIn, and just started connecting with some of them. And that way you can speak to them and say, you know what, because these people would have been the most current people who have done the same application as you, and say, you know, what went well in your application cycle, and what do you think that I should do in mine, and what do you think the law firm is looking for as well. And it doesn't hurt to also speak to the graduate recruitment, like I did say in that video, and the graduate recruitment department of that law firm. They're the ones who would be recruiting the next kind of cycle of trainees. So with you being able to contact them and asking them what they're looking for, that way you can figure out what your application needs to look like. Subscribing to legal media, so things like Lawyer Today or kind of these law newspapers that summarize all the I've lost the words now, but summarize all the legal kind of updates of the week or the day are really helpful, because there's loads of them where you can literally just have a 5-minute scan and you understand what was in court today or what was happening in the commercial law world today. And just like a 20-minute scan, it does a lot when you're trying to do your application, because you just remember all the little things that you've been building up over the past year. It definitely applies to the kind of research aspect of these tips. Applying for vacation schemes is a really great way for you to kind of lower the pressure of your application, because you are asking the law firm to take you on for 2 weeks instead of 2 years. So vacation schemes are a really great in to the law firm, and a lot of law firms recruit for their training contract from their vacation schemes as well. Something in addition to this, because vacation schemes are obviously becoming more and more popular over the years, is applying for vacation schemes or training contracts at companies or smaller law firms. So for example, at the BBC, or looking at becoming an in-house trainee instead. The competition are less, and if you have a niche interest like, let's say, media, then you might enjoy doing a training contract at the BBC as well, like the legal counsel for the BBC. Keeping your CVs relevant and descriptive. This is obviously one of those ones that's would be said to you all the time, and making sure that your CV is as coherent as possible, because you have to think about it from the perspective of the graduate recruiter who's looking at it, and how many CVs they're actually flicking through, and how many times they do that a year. Keeping it as concise as possible with all the information on it. It is kind of a nuanced skill, and not to sell the university further, but our employability department is so great at doing that, and has so much experience in refining CVs for the employer that you'd be kind of interested in, that they are a great help in doing that. But again, it's a really fine line between keeping it descriptive and then overly wordy, and you want to make sure you don't cross that line. So hopefully you kind of get the idea in terms of the applications for the training contracts if you're trying to become a solicitor. They are tough, and they're kind of designed to be tough as well, but you have to keep going, and you have to kind of see through the rejections as well, and you use it as a learning experience. Definitely don't be kind of shying away from reapplying to a law firm after you've been rejected. They can see that you have reapplied, but what they're looking for is that your application looks different and you've done something to change it, rather than you're just applying with the same application year after year to the same law firm, because they do see that. But yeah, do ask any questions. I'll still be in the chat box having a look at some of the questions, but I'll pass over to Lucy now, who will tell you some application tips about the pupilages.
Thank you, Miriam. It's very similar to being a solicitor, really. It's just about exposing yourself to the profession, making sure that everywhere you apply to, whether that be for pupillage, a scholarship, the bar course, a mini pupillage, you want to show them that you understand what a barrister does, particularly when it gets to pupillage, when they're looking for the finished product. It's your responsibility to have done that work beforehand, to have experienced the law, spoken to barristers, got the grades, that kind of stuff. So you understand, well, one, you understand what you're going into, and two, that you're good enough to do it. So at your level, or at pre-bar course, it really is about getting as much experience as you can. Chambers websites are a really, really great start. Just investigate where you want to be, the type of work that they're doing, chambers in your local area. Have a look if they've got any mini pupilages available. So the way I went about mini pupilages, which is essentially just what it says on the tin. It's barrister work experience. It's usually 2 to 5 days, and you'll shadow a barrister in a particular area of law from one chambers. So the way I got mini pupilages was literally just searched chambers in my area, had a look on the website, and applied for the minis in the areas of law that I wanted to explore. And that's a really key theme as well. If you're set on being a criminal barrister, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't explore other areas of law. If you can do it, then do it. Get as much experience as you can, and then you can put that on the application form. Inns of Court scholarships are great as well. Not only are they financially wonderful, the Inns of Court have millions and millions of pounds to give away to aspiring barristers every single year to support you on your bar course, but they are also a sort of prestigious seal of approval. So when you apply for, say, your bar course or particularly pupillage, they can see that you've got an Inns of Court scholarship. It's just an extra tick box there, but perfectly fine if you also don't have one. Just make sure you understand your area of law, current awareness, that kind of stuff. So read articles, keep up with the big cases, the news in your particular practice area, and also have a think about where you actually want to be in future. Think about location, think about practice area, think about the type of work you want to be doing. Being a barrister is fantastic, but it is a job at the end of the day. You don't just take what you can get, you have to actually enjoy it as well. So it really is a marathon and not a sprint in terms of building up your experience. Pro bono experience is great as well, paralegaling, so you can say you've experienced law in practice as well as sort of getting the grades that you need. The competition is fierce. There are not many places each year to get pupillage. It is difficult, and most people take a few years to be successful in that. You've just got to expect rejection. You do get used to it, and when you are successful, it is well worth it. But just make sure your applications are drafted like a piece of advocacy. So it should be persuasive, it should read well, sell yourself, but also make sure it's grammatically correct and all that stuff as well. And my last and final tip, arguably the most important: any application you send off on your journey to the bar, do not send it off without getting feedback first. And like Miriam said, the employability team at ULaw is fantastic. They are, I could go on about them for hours, but equally don't dismiss any employability team at your university or wherever you're studying. Use them, get their feedback, and never send an application off before somebody else has looked at it. But yeah, that's application tips for the bar. And again, if you do have any questions, I can answer them in the chat.
Thank you both very much. So, gonna hand back over to yourselves now, because what we thought we'd do for the final section of the session is to look at a couple of well-known case studies, one from a civil setting and one from a criminal setting, and just get Miriam and Lucy to talk through, if they were the solicitors and the barristers in these cases, how would they actually deal with it and what would their roles be within these cases. So, Miriam, I think I'm handing over to you to start off.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes. So like Hannah said, we're just going to talk a little bit about what the solicitor and barrister would do and then put it into a context of a civil case and a criminal case, just so that we can contextualize all the things that we've spoken about today in terms of roles and tasks that you'll be doing. So for the civil case study, you might have heard of this case in the news in the past couple of years. It's Vardy and Rooney, and what happened here is in 2019 to 2020, Rooney accused Vardy of leaking information about her life to the Sun newspaper via information she was getting from Rooney's private Instagram, and then Vardy sued Rooney for libel and defamation for that statement that she had put out. And then Vardy's claim was dismissed in court, and Vardy was ordered to pay Rooney's legal expenses. So it was essentially found that there was no libel and defamation in terms of Rooney kind of putting out that statement on social media accusing Vardy. So in this case, it would be libel in court. That would be the case that we'd be chasing. And if we were acting for Rooney, as the solicitor, we take initial instructions from our client, who is Rooney, and we would give our preliminary advice, depending on how comfortable we feel with doing that. It might be that we do that within a follow-up meeting as well. We then assess the merits of the case, and then if necessary, and we find, okay, so Rooney wants to definitely go to court, or you know, Vardy's definitely going to court, and so we definitely have to be there, we'd start instructing a barrister for an opinion and see what would happen in terms of figuring out kind of our tactics for going into court. We then draft a letter before action, and then also make sure we talk to the client and kind of explain the situation about what's going to happen, and then making sure that we consider alternative dispute resolution as well. We always have to kind of give that option to them, which is things like out of court settlements. And then we'd prepare all of our court documents, making sure that we have our claim form and statements of case. And then we'd prepare the entire evidence bundle for the barrister. And then we'd instruct the specialist barrister to attend the hearings in court. But we would, of course, be there the entire time. So I'll hand over to Lucy to tell you what a barrister would do and how they would kind of take over the case once it goes to court.
Thank you, Miriam. So I'm going to skim through this so we have time for questions. I'm aware we are coming up to 3 o'clock. So in this case, a barrister would, like Miriam mentioned, prepare the formal opinion if the solicitor requests one. You'd then provide advice to solicitors on the merits of the case, costs, evidence, liability, quantum, whatever they ask for. It's your job to do it. Then you'd draft or redraft any particulars of claim if the solicitor asked you. Before the trial, you'd analyse the bundle and prepare your case to present. You'd meet with the client prior to the hearing and offer advice. You'd analyse the written statement and then use this to structure your examination in chief in court. You'd then prepare and deliver your cross-examination. And also your opening and closing speech as well, and your submissions too. So that's the role of a barrister in a civil case. Now moving on to a criminal case. So you may be familiar with Gino D'Acampo. Before he was the sort of media personality that he is now and the chef. When he was 21 years old in 1998, he actually broke into someone's house. That someone was musician Paul Young, and he stole £4,000 worth of guitars, platinum discs, and all that sort of stuff. He was actually caught. Police found Gino's DNA on a cigarette butt left outside Paul Young's door, and he was jailed for 2 years. So I'll hand over to Miriam to see what the solicitor would do in this instance, and then I'll move on to tell you what the barrister would do.
Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, so as a solicitor, we'd meet the defendant in the police station after their arrest. So we'd meet D'Acampo in the police station. We'd sit into the police interview and make sure that there's no inappropriate questions are being asked. And we provide the defendant with advice on how to best answer the questions and make sure that the police investigation and all the evidence that's being handled complies with the codes that the police have to follow. If D'Acampo was charged, we'd meet with him and advise him on the options that he kind of has access to and take his instructions, figure out what he would plea and whether he'd be successful or not. And it's really important we encourage the defendant to make good decisions early on in the case because that could benefit him in the long run when it comes to sentencing. We fill in all the preliminary court documents, making sure to instruct a barrister and send all the evidence in the bundles to the clerks. And we then go to the magistrate's court with the client and maybe instruct a barrister for bail application if that's necessary. And if the case is sent to the Crown Court, we'd always attend the hearings with the client in the background. But then, of course, that is where the barrister would take over once we go into court. And I'll hand back to Lucy to kind of tell you how she would finish up the case.
Great. So a barrister would receive the papers or instructions from your clerks firstly. You'd then analyse these papers, draft the statements of, review the statements of case, evidence, disclosure, and request any further disclosure if you feel it's necessary. You'd meet with Gino before your appearance in the Crown Court. You take instructions, provide advice, and then build that case based on the papers, the evidence, and your meeting. You draft an opening speech, you do this, then examination in chief, cross-examination, closing speech, similar to a criminal trial, but usually a little longer. You then meet with the client throughout the trial if they needed anything, and also after the trial and the verdict too. And it doesn't stop there. You would attend the sentencing hearing and deliver a plea and mitigation before the judgment is passed.
Fabulous. Thank you both so much. So we have pretty much come to the end of the session, but there are a couple of questions in the chat box that we think would be really good to answer live. So we will just probably spend 5 extra minutes just answering those, because they are really good ones. We know we won't get chucked out bang on 3 o'clock, so we'll answer those quickly. But just to mention that we have a fantastic on-demand platform, so you can access it by going to vod.law.ac.uk. And if you do wish to have a look on there is so many fantastic videos. You can see the video that we showed earlier with the chat between our future solicitor and our future barrister. There's also a bit of a rerun through the session that you've heard today, some information on how to become a solicitor, how to become a barrister, etc. So do have a look on vod.law.ac.uk. You will need to register, but it is completely free to do so. So there have been a couple of questions coming in that I think would be really good to answer live. Charlotte asked a really good question for Miriam and for Lucy around what helped your decision for your chosen field. So I can see, Miriam, you're replying to that via typing, but let's answer it now because it's a great question. So yeah, why did kind of both of you decide to go into the professions that you did? Miriam first.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Charlotte. I was just typing essentially that the best way to figure out which path you want is to immerse yourself into experiences with both of them. So whether it's speaking to people in the field or maybe doing small little work experiences with people who work as solicitors or barristers, which is, again, not always so accessible, and it's not always something that you can find quite easily. But speaking to people in the field can be something that you would have access to if you're going about it kind of the right way. So if you're, for example, these kinds of events, or if you're going on LinkedIn and finding people that are working in the roles, just asking them to go for a coffee. It's kind of high pressure for you to figure out whether you know which sector or chosen field from now or ever. Really, I still don't know 100% which field I want to go into, and that's what training contract is for as well, is to go into various different seats and industries and figure out which one you like. But in terms of whether you want to be a solicitor or a barrister, I always kind of say that it's really a personality type of decision that you're making. So I don't know about Lucy, but some other people that I've spoken to who have become barristers have always said, no, I don't want to make a connection with a client and I don't really care for that. Whereas I like the idea of kind of starting with the client from zero and helping them either achieve a goal, whether it's kind of a business goal, or helping them to settle a dispute or find a solution to a legal problem. I kind of like that idea. Whereas, I mean, I can't speak for Lucy, of course, but from conversations I've had with other barristers where they just kind of like to be the person who's at the end and finds a whole legal resolution in court, or likes to be the person who doesn't have that close connection to the client. So maybe that could help in terms of the split between solicitor and barrister. Once you make that decision, it's really about taking the time to do the research within different sectors, whether it's you like commercial or criminal, or whether you like something niche like pharmaceutical drug patents or something like that. It's all about the research and figuring out what you like, what you might like to work in.
Amazing. Thanks, Miriam. Anything to add, Lucy?
Yeah, I think Miriam's given brilliant advice. It is about experience, it's about your personality and the skills that you have. For me, I'll be going into just crime, so I will be a criminal barrister, and I could give you my interview answer, the advocacy, performance, intellectual challenge, working with people, that kind of stuff. But I just couldn't stay away from crime. It's so interesting to me. It's exciting. It's fast paced. I get to speak all the time. I get that fear before I go and stand up in court, and then the relief afterwards. And I was a theatre kid as well, so I don't know how I thought I would ever do any different area of law. But yeah, it's just about what really interests you and what you find you will enjoy every single day going to work. You should pick that one.
Brilliant, thank you. And there was another question in the chat box that I just want to come to before we finish. And so it was from William, and it was around, during your undergraduate studies, how much networking and work experience did you have before you graduated? So Miriam, maybe come to you first.
That's a really good question. I wish I could say a lot to become a good kind of role model in that way, but my journey wasn't as easy as those people who probably did have a lot more networking and work experience. But I didn't do a lot of networking. I was kind of that student who got a bit too caught up in their degree and was trying to just reach for the grades, really, which isn't a bad thing. It just meant that I didn't really know what I was applying to or signing into basically when I was doing my applications, which is probably why I got the 20 rejections the first time around. So I'll answer this question about what I would do really. In terms of the work experience before graduating, I did have a week or 2 week work experience, which is basically a 2 week vacation scheme that I did with St. Mason's in their Dubai office once I really started to screw my head on and figure out how I was going to go down this path and try and be successful. And then I also did a 1 week work experience with an American law firm called Greenberg Traurig, and that was kind of the extent of my legal work experience before graduating, which is not a lot. And in comparison to a lot of people at my course, they had a lot more than that, and it kind of spanned over a couple of years, whereas those 2 pieces of work experience that I had happened in the same summer of my second year of my law degree. So in terms of networking, I hadn't really focused on that a lot, but I do wish that I had. I think it would have made all the difference when I was doing any of my application. But I hope this shows that even with very little networking and work experience, but if you graft enough, you can still get to the end. But I definitely wouldn't recommend leaving it behind as I did.
Thanks, Miriam. Lucy?
Yeah, I didn't have too much either, to be fair. I was also just focused on the grades, largely because I just enjoyed university. I didn't really know what a barrister was until second year, and I didn't decide I wanted to be one. Didn't decide I wanted to be one until my third year. So I could have done mini pupilages, networking events a lot sooner. I'd say I wish I did, but it worked out. I just think it would have been fun to do more, specifically mini pupilages, shadowing experience, even just sitting in court. I think it would have excited me to do that alongside my degree. So if you can do that, apply. There's no harm in applying to mini pupilages, whatever stage you're at your undergraduate degree. Networking, if you see an event, just go. But it's not essential to have a ridiculous amount of experience. Even when I applied for pupillage, I only had 2 real mini pupilages. But it's how you use that experience, how you build on that, how you keep connections, and how you phrase it and persuade people in an application form. So it's nothing to stress about, but it is fun. And you have a lot more time than you think during your undergraduate degree to get this experience. So put yourself out there and just do it.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. So we are going to need to call it a day there just because of the timing. So I just wanted to say, first of all, a massive thank you to the team at Target Jobs for hosting us today. And also a big thank you to Miriam and Lucy for joining us as well. We hope that you have found the session really insightful and that I think we've gone through most of the questions in the chat box. So yeah, it was lovely to have all of you with us. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we will see you again at another session in the near future. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye.